Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Uncultured Universe. We are the podcast where two friends show each other movies, shows, and anything else that they need to see, hear, or experience in order to get a little bit more cultured. I'm your host, Joe, and I'm joined, as always, by the Uncultured Justin.
Hi.
Today, we will be we will be conning our way right into a weirdly healthy and supportive relationship. It's 2016's The Handmaiden.
Man, so you mentioned anything someone needs to see, hear, or experience,
Yeah.
and all three are insanely present in this
Oh,
movie.
did we pull a hat trick on this one? Is it just like a sensual overload, would you say?
It is, yeah. I hope this movie won for sound design. Um,
It so this is a Korean movie. It didn't have like a splash at the Oscars or anything, but it was very well received just like internationally. And it was
yeah,
still like huge in America.
sure.
I think like in terms of like awards that we would kind of recognize, it won like international film at the BAFTAs, which is like the British Oscars.
Sick.
Um but that's kind of as far as it got there. But awards are not everything in this case, and this was much more of just like a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah. This movie, it passed me by. This was not my pick. This was a Joe pick.
Hmm.
But this, first of all, this movie is a lot of things all at once. It's a lot. It's a lot. Period. A space capital LOT lot. Um,
Well,
but it was gorgeous to look at.
yeah, I mean, fitting that this being our batshit insane mini series,
Right.
this was the first movie I thought of when you asked, what should we do for a batshit insane mini series, and when we define batshit insane, Webster's dictionary. No, um, I I wasn't going to pick something that was even like abstract or non-objective or anything, but this movie just like hit me at the time when I first watched it in a way that like few movies have. And
Yeah.
it was one of those movies where it was just like, God, I love that movies can be like this. That
I love that we can
you
make
can
this.
do things.
It's like I love that they can just float a concept and then it just pays off tenfold
This
in spades.
This movie is a roller coaster. It is a experience of the senses, as
Yeah.
you were saying. It folds back and forth on itself multiple times, each time kind of becoming a different movie in the process. And
Yes.
it's a ride from start to finish for the 2.5 hour runtime.
There is so much double entendre with what you just said.
Yeah, yeah.
However, so a little bit of color to this experience. You said, "Hey, let's watch this movie. We're gonna check it out. Don't watch the director's cut. Watch it on Prime. That
Oh my
has the
god.
theatrical cut, which I did a little bit of digging, and that is the preferred cut.
Yeah.
Um, there's some extra scenes or whatever in the director's cut that like kind of ruin the movie, from what I read.
No, it's so I also dug in on this too because I was very confused. So, for some context here, we spent about a month trying to watch this movie because I kept on delaying things because I got like two types of plague in the month of February. And I kept on being like, okay, let's watch it now. Let's watch it here. I sent you a link to it that ended up being the extended cut of the
Mm,
movie and not the
extended.
theatrical cut,
Yep.
which I realized because I started watching it and I was like, this feels really different than the movie that I remember. So it's
Mm,
not just more scenes, it's scenes in different orders. And
interesting.
I think they remove the narration, like the
Mm,
voiceover narration that happens in pretty
yeah.
much every scene of the theatrical movie. And so it's much more, I don't think it like folds back and forth on itself as much as it like does. It shows things more in like chronological order and lets you interpret what's happening as opposed to like hearing the characters' internal monologues explaining what's happening.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's like a different experience that you can get value out of in a way. But when I realized it, I was like, oh God, no. Because like
Don't watch this one.
that's not what I was going for. Fortunately, you had not started watching it. I think I caught you like an hour before you started watching it.
Yeah, you did, and, glad you did, because, yeah, I can't imagine watching this movie in chronological order because it kinda ruins it a little
It
bit.
does. Yeah, yeah,
Watching it in the 3 parts as presented from the theatrical cut make it fit more of that batshit insane kind of motif what I would, put into the bucket of batshit crazy because so you're like, "All right, we're gonna watch The Handmaiden, it's my batshit crazy entry," and we watched it over the course of 3 nights, 1 part per night. It was
oh,
about
that was perfect.
an hour or so for each one. So we got to the end of part 1, and I was like, "This movie's not that crazy." It's like, sure, it's a little sexual here and there, but it's like, "Oh, they like each other. We'll see what happens." This movie's not as crazy as I think it was gonna be, and then the next night, part 2 happens, and then it's like, "Oh, okay, I see what Joe's doing." And you told me to never doubt you again, which I never had.
Yeah, basically part 1, Justin's thinking like, "Do I do I break it to Joe that he's kind of basic as shit?"
Is
Uh
Joe being so baseline with his batshit crazy movies? I was like, "Has Joe never seen a double cross movie before? Like, what's happening?" But this movie has triple crosses,
Yeah,
quadruple crosses.
multiple narratives, happening before you even realize they're happening, and
Yeah,
multiple jumps in time and jumps backwards in time to kind of portray things from different perspectives.
yeah.
Um, alright, let's get into it. Let me give you some film stats, and then we'll do, a quick, trademark icebreaker.
Ooh,
And then I think for the purpose of this movie, we do have to like attempt to go through this plot, or else no one's going to know what the fuck we're talking about. So maybe
true.
we'll have just like a back and forth on that,
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
before we get into some thoughts. Okay,
Attempt.
so we are talking about The Handmaiden, 2016 movie directed by Park Chan-wook, a Korean director. It is inspired by the 2002 novel Fingersmith by Welsh writer Sarah Waters, though. Uh,
Fingersmith?
yeah, did you know this?
No.
Um, so the book that it's inspired by is set in Victorian era England, which you can kind of see how it's like a similar setup. The story there is obviously takes place in England. It's a similar like con happening where it's like this gentleman con guy hiring a maid to kind of go in and kind of defraud this reclusive lady out of her money.
Yeah,
And then there's multiple cons that kind of spin off from that. Uh, I was reading the summary of the book because I wanted to see if there were any differences, and it seems like there's a lot more to do with the house that the maid Suki in the Handmaiden grows up in. They end up
yeah.
back there a lot more, and like her family slash crew there is a lot more nefarious in certain ways. And then
Yeah,
the other part, it seemed like they basically, so you're talking about like multiple twists in the movie. They take out like the third twist where it turns out like the two women have basically ganged up together and started their own con.
yeah.
That's not really in the book, so it kind
Hmm.
of ends with like that second initial twist where it's like oh, they're both conning against each other, and then she gets locked up in an insane asylum. In the book, that's like a true lockup, and like
Oh, man.
she's truly like what the fuck. But then they kind of get back together from there and resolve things.
Hmm.
um I much prefer the movie. I think that kind of is what makes this movie pop, is that like third level of like we're gonna complete the trifecta of conning here and have them team up against the men in their lives.
Yeah, you love a good conclusive, like,
Mm.
literally stick it to the man at the end, and they absolutely get what's coming to them, both her uncle and, I don't
The
know what
Count,
the
the
count,
Count.
yeah.
We'll get into the names. We'll get into the names of everyone. Okay, this movie is starring Kim Min Hee as Lady Hideko, Kim Tae-ri as the maid Suki, I think is her name. Ha Jung-woo, I believe, is the Count, and then Cho Jin-woong, I believe, is the uncle. Released in May of 2016, made 38 million American dollars against a budget of 9 million. Not bad.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and we talked about the version we watched was the original theatrical cut, but I now know that there is a much different extended cut. That
Very
is
different. 20
basically a
extra
different
minutes.
movie.
Yeah.
um, Interesting. Okay. Shall we jump into a little bit of an icebreaker, just kind of loosen up the convo?
Absolutely. Let's do it. I can't wait. Loosen me up, Joe.
Okay, cool. Just a quick little game here. So we talked about how The Handmaiden is a con movie, so I wanted to play the con game with you. Uh, The Handmaiden is a movie about cons, both long and short. I'm going to give you a quiz about other con movies. You just have to answer the questions.
Got it.
Easy enough?
Done. Mhm.
All right, let's get into it. Question 1. What type of car is famously used in several chase sequences in both the 1969 and 2003 versions of The Italian Job?
Con Air.
No.
No, it is it's the little guy. It's the little one, the Mini Cooper.
The Mini Cooper, correct. Question 2. Name 6 actors who starred in all 3 movies of the original Ocean's 11 trilogy.
Con Air.
Yes.
Bruce Willis. Bruce
No.
Springsteen. No,
No.
who's the other guy with the Brad Pitt?
You got 1.
George Clooney.
2.
Julia Roberts.
She was only in 2 of them.
Oh, the old guy. That one old guy.
Yep. Carl Reiner.
Yep.
Yep. You got
it. Casey Affleck?
Yeah.
Who's Yep.
You're on a crazy route with this. Yeah.
Matt Damon.
Yes, that's 5. All right.
It's been a long time since I've seen any Ocean's 11 movie.
I thought this would be an easy question. I'm sorry.
No. Oh man, who's oh, he was in the football movie we watched, Varsity Blues. He's like the partner with Casey
Yep.
Affleck.
He's Casey Affleck's brother in the movie. Who is it?
Yep. I don't
I'll give
remember
it to
his
you.
name.
Scott
Yeah.
Conn. Scott Conn.
Scott Conn. That's it. That's 6.
Okay. Okay, let's continue forward. Oops. Twist alert. This game is no longer the quiz about con movies that you thought it was. This game is now the subtitles game. And it's the classic game where you answer questions about subtitles. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Question number 1. Which director famously said in his Oscar acceptance speech that once you overcome the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles, you will be introduced to so many more amazing films?
It was whoever did Crouching Tiger.
No.
Ah.
It was whoever did Parasite.
Okay.
That guy.
That's
Bong
the
Joon-ho.
Bong Joon-ho. Yep. Got it.
Question 2. In the movie The Handmaiden, which 2 languages are primarily spoken on screen, and what color subtitles are used to denote each language?
I think it's Korean and Japanese, and I think Japanese is yellow and Korean was white.
Yeah, I think it's
Yep.
like white or pink. Mine was pink-ish, but I think it's white. Yeah. Yellow and white. Okay.
Which I appreciated that. They disclaimered that at the beginning.
The extended version that I gave you did not have those subtitles like that. We would have been completely lost.
Screwed. Yep.
Yeah. Question 3. Are you the type of person who typically has subtitles on when watching movies or TV shows? Why or why not?
Yes, because I'm a millennial.
Okay, cool.
Answer.
Great answer. Moving on. Twist alert. It's not the subtitles game anymore. Maybe it never was. We're spinning the whole board around, and you now have 30 seconds to come up with a game to make me play based on or related to the movie The Handmaiden. Go.
How many movies have we watched with a passionate Sapphic love scene?
Counting
for this podcast.
And Howl's Moving Castle, I would say no. I think
What was the other movie that we watched that had a passionate, lesbian love scene?
did we watch another one?
Yeah.
Shit.
We saw it at I'll give you a hint, we saw it at the Plaza
Oh.
Theater.
Oh, this and Black Swan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, fun for everybody.
What was the title of your game?
Um, Scissors Sisters.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. You passed. The final twist. We're back to the con game. Maybe we
The
were in the con game the
whole
entire
time,
time.
yeah.
Here's your final task. If you had to assemble a team to pull off some variety of heist, but you can only use characters from the movies that we have covered, who would you pick? Your team must include the brains, the muscle, the liar, the master of disguise, and the financier.
Oh my god. Uh, can I consult a list of movies we've covered before?
What's a list of movies we've covered?
Okay. Number 1, for the brains,
The brains.
this is going to be from the episode that you weren't on, where we did Interstellar, and it's going to be, um, Michael Caine's character from Interstellar,
Smart.
'cause he's
Smart.
super smart. He's super smart.
He's in the
The
background of everything with like a toothpick, and he's like, "Here's how it's gonna go."
right. The muscle,
The muscle.
uh, the muscle is going to be Mel Gibson's chicken character from Chicken Run. No, because
Okay.
no one expects it. No one expects
No
it.
one does. No.
Master of Disguise,
Master of disguise.
Sam from Trick or Treat.
That's really good. He's
Yep, damn,
terrifying.
damn right. What were the next ones?
The liar.
The Liar. It's going to be David Bowie in Labyrinth.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
He's a good liar.
Con man, go in and charm the ladies.
Mhm.
Okay, the financier. Who's financing the entire thing? Who's the money?
The big Lebowski, old man Lebowski, with all his
Oh,
riches.
Lebowski.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so we've assembled a group of
Quite the
5 guys for this heist.
That's how we do it.
Fantastic. Justin, thank you for playing the con game. I think you
Great.
passed that with
That was great.
flying colors.
I love it. That was a good one.
Ooh, let's get into some thoughts and prayers.
Oh. Joe, the graphic nature of this movie caught me by surprise. I saw it in
Yeah.
the disclaimer of just like nudity and sexual situations. It's like, what movie doesn't have those? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
I did not expect it to get quite so graphic in the second part.
There there is one particular sex scene that is played during the first part. It happens and you're like, "Yeah, okay. That's quite a lot happening."
Mhm.
And then it is revisited and
Yes.
expanded upon in the second part from multiple points of view. And
Yeah.
there's quite a lot more happening.
Lots of positions. They're just like rifling through them.
So many. This is first and foremost a movie about sex and the ways that we put it on a pedestal and use it as a tool, the ways that we actually like enjoy it with people that we like, and the realistic or unrealistic expectations that we have around it.
Yeah, I know. And some of it, so I took a quick tour on Reddit of The Handmaiden,
Mhm.
of, people's thoughts and stuff, and people were like, "I saw this in theaters, and I'd never had so much secondhand embarrassment around other people in my entire life."
No way.
Uh,
It's wonderful.
and well, just like with some of those scenes, it kind of they likened it to, watching, a kissing scene with your parents of just
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, I can't wait for this to be over with all these strangers." But then there's like, schlorping and wet grinding
Yeah.
going on, taking place, and being seeing that in a theater of strangers, very loud and very big in front of your face. I could get that. I understand.
I had a note. I really want a montage of all just like the squishes in this movie, the sound design of just like fluids passing from one place to another is kind of crazy.
I wanna see the
Um,
person doing the Foley for this movie, like, taking a peach and, like, squishing it into a microphone and, like,
just
making
like,
it just punching a peach.
is this what tongues sound like together?
What does it
I
sound like
guess.
when Benoit balls get inserted? Like, someone had to, like, they're
It's
they're extracting a peach pit.
echoey, echoey. I think we have to attempt to describe the plot of this movie.
We do have to attempt it. And I kind of I've been going through it the past couple nights of like, how am I going to describe this movie?
Yeah.
And the best way to do it is in the three parts. Um, are you
So
giving me a time limit?
no, no, I think we can kind of just like feel it out. So uh this do you want to like trade off parts? Like I'll go through the first part, you go through the second part?
I'm going to do each part, but you fill in some color where I
Okay,
miss.
good.
Okay. Part one. This is focused more on Suki's character. Her background growing up in like occupied Korea, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
1930s.
1930s occupied Korea, and she lives with like a family of like criminals, I think, or something like that. They have a shared interest, but their main thing is like the count comes in and he's like, I got this great plan, you guys. There's this lady who's like being groomed by her uncle. I'm gonna go in and woo her essentially to, take him out from under his wing, and you're gonna pose as her handmaiden, and it's all gonna make sense. I'm gonna like dupe her for all her money, send her to an insane asylum, and then like I'll cut you in some money. You can keep the clothes and some jewelry and a couple tens of thousands, however much money
Yeah.
they discuss. So the whole part one is focusing on that initial con of Suki and the Count, and they're kind of hanging out, and I find out Suki can't read. So that seems kind of weird. Of like, girl, she gonna get caught. Like this isn't gonna go good for her. But then it's just like, oh, they kind of start to like each other a little bit, and then you get towards the end of it, it's like, oh, they really like each other. And then that kind of
Suki and Lady Hideko, to be clear.
yeah, Lady Hideko. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or Hideko, or wherever the inflection lies. But yeah, they start to like each other a lot, and then um, I think that's pretty much the end of part one, right?
No, I think part 1 ends with, well, she
Oh, that's right.
they elope with the count, except they're all together, so they're kind of like they've escaped the uncle.
Oh yeah,
And
that was part of the conceit too.
yeah,
Like the uncle's gonna go away, and then I'm gonna take. This is the count talking. Like I'm gonna take her away, and we're gonna get married, but then I'm gonna commit her to an insane asylum,
yeah.
and that's where it's gonna end. And so, yeah, part one ends with that, but then it ends on the cliffhanger of the. They're like, oh no, that's not Lady Hideko. That's her, and they take
So
Suki, and then you're like, what?
right, it ends on a quote unquote betrayal where Suki is supposedly realizing that Hideko and the Count have been conning her the entire time instead of her and the Count conning Hideko. Yada yada.
Yeah,
Triangles at play here.
yeah. So many hard cornered shapes. So that's part one in a bubble.
We basically do a freeze frame and then someone does like a rewind sound like
Yeah.
and then it goes back.
Yeah,
I
I
bet
love
you're
that.
wondering how I got here.
He's like, "Hi, my name's Ryan, and I bet you're wondering how I got into this situation. Well," and then like All Star Smash Mouth starts playing. It's just like we got to find that out. We got to go back to the beginning, and that's pretty much what happens.
Uh-huh.
Part two is focused from Lady Hideko's point of view, and you find out that her and the Count have a con plot of their own. he tells her he visits her early on, and he's like, "Hey, so we're gonna get just like I got this schmuck down at my place. She's gonna come in and pose as your handmaiden, and we're gonna dupe her into thinking that we're gonna commit you, and we're just gonna switch at the last minute, and we're still just gonna run away. You get to be away from your uncle. So like, isn't aren't I great?" Um, Pretty much, right? And then we go through the same kind of thing that we did in part 1, but it's from, Lady Hideko's point of view.
Yeah. And I think like the key piece here is that like throughout part one, she's supposed to be this like naive kind of not knowledgeable about the world lady, and then in part two you realize that like from childhood her uncle has been
Oh, yeah.
basically forcing her to read like
Smut.
smutty books to him and his friends down in his weird gross torture library. And so it's not that she's like naive to the way about the world, it's like she has had just like all thoughts of sex just like drilled out of her. Basically she's just numb to everything at this point,
Yeah.
and so she wants to get out and maybe wants to die, and you can't really tell, and so the count is
Yeah.
kind of her way out in that way. But as as also happens with Suki, she doesn't really expect their relationship to blossom in that way. And
Mm-mm.
so that's the turning point of this all, is like they both don't expect to fall for each other, and that's what kind of throws everything up in the air.
Yeah, this part dives a whole lot more into Lady Hideko's background, where it is very disturbing, very dark. Um,
Yeah.
Living at her uncle's house of just like, like sexual torment and threats of whatever may be in the basement.
Yeah.
Like Jesus Christ, like I thought part 3 was gonna go like full like Lovecraftian of because they kind of hint at it a little
Yeah.
bit of
Lots of octopus stuff.
lots of weird octopus stuff, and then there's like one weird shot in the basement in part 2, and like you can hear something writhing
Hmm.
wetly, like if there were those kinds of subtitles, it would say writhes wetly. And you're like, what the hell is that? Is in the basement.
Total
Um,
freak writing these subtitles, that's for sure.
no kidding. Just like, yeah, let me describe this. Can't wait. Um, it's so gushy. Uh, Unfathomable gush, is the subtitle to this movie. But
Yeah.
yeah, like crazy, stuff where of course, she would be such a numb person, and you find out, like, the history with her mother a little bit. So I kinda wished, which I think you mentioned there's more of it in the book or maybe the extended edition, but there's a little bit more background of Suki's character,
Hmm.
and that whole side, like her posse of con artists.
Yeah, you get kind of like a voiceover of her explaining like her mother was a con artist kind of on the streets,
Yeah,
and she almost has like a legacy of conning to live up to, and
right.
that's why she's kind of like taking this job, and so that's what her driving force is coming into this house, and so she doesn't really have much identity beyond that other than just kind of like wanting to move on up until she gets a little crush on the
Y
lady.
Yeah, which I guess, yeah, by comparison, her background is not as interesting or as in-depth
Mhm.
as, Lady Hideko's is, where it's this whole other 4th character now of her uncle, and how, like, just, like, deep his claws are into her,
Yeah.
and has been her whole life, teaching her, like, forcing her to read and learning how to read Japanese and stuff like that, and then, like, just all this crazy wicked smut, insane. That's part 2. Part 3 is where it really comes apart, of just, like, we're off the rails of now this is the 3rd con where we find out that, the ladies, eventually kind of become aware of each other's con,
Yeah.
with each other. Of like, well, I you thought you were tricking me and I was tricking you the whole time. This was going to be whatever. But they come to some agreement that like this is their respective plans to each other. But like we're gonna get them both. Um, and they kind of just run away together, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, the way that all of this unfolds is basically like going over the same narratives again and again from different perspectives and giving the audience more information each time. And
Yep.
so there's parts in part 1 that actually happen like before and after parts in part 2 and 3, and you don't
Yep.
really realize it, like them running away at the end of part 1 to the count. You don't really realize like all of part 2 happens like before that scene.
Right. Oh yeah,
Like
when they're in the boat. Yeah.
yeah, when they're in the boat, and then part 2 goes in and like gives context to that. Part 2 kind of like culminates in what I think is like my favorite scene of the movie, and it's also like deeply funny, which is when Hideko is thinking like, oh, she can run away with the count, but like she has this fling with Suki, but then Suki is like still kind of like quote unquote trying to con her and trying to convince her to go with the count. So she feels like she'll never actually have love, and there's like that numbness inside of her. So she goes and tries to hang herself.
Yeah.
And you think it's gonna be this like really sad kind of emotional scene. Like she hangs herself in the same place her
Tree.
aunt
Yeah.
hangs
Oh, her
herself,
aunt, not her
and
mom. Yeah.
yeah, and she drops, and the camera kind of lingers on her, and you can tell she's not actually hanging, and she just like kind of looks around, and it pans out, and Suki's like holding onto her legs as hard as she can, and the way that Hideko just like looks down and is like, what are you doing? This is
Yeah.
stupid. She's so over it, and
Yeah.
then that's of course when they like admit their cons to each other, and Suki is so overcome with like hating the count that she accidentally drops the deck when she's like hanging for a few seconds.
Oh yeah, that's right. She's
It's
mad and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Yeah.
I think this movie is insane and obviously dealing with like some super dark material, but there's also just some deeply funny moments in it. Um,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah, there
the
was another laugh out loud part where I think it's in part 1 where we're still on Tsuki's point of view,
mhm.
and the count is like talking to Hideko of just like it's saying something like incredibly corny shit, and you pan over to Suki and she's just like, "Ugh."
Oh yeah, all
Yeah,
the times I had a note like all the times when she's laughing at the count in the background is so funny.
yeah,
Um, but like I think that's this director's style from what I've come to understand. So the 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 entry point for me with this movie was a couple years ago. I listened to this podcast, Blank Check, where they talk about different directors and their filmographies, and they did Park Chan-wook. And so I wanted to watch this movie before they talked about it, because I had always like known it as a poster before now, and I'd never really known what it was about. So I wanted to get in on it before they went through the whole summary of it. Um, and so that's how I ended up watching this movie. But Park Chan Wook also directed. Have you heard of Old Boy?
yeah. It's part of like the Vengeance trilogy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, he did the Vengence Trilogy, and then he also did like Stoker. He did like Decision to Leave more recently. So he deals with these really kind of dark corners of the world, but like
yeah.
puts them in this like really like graphically colorful and sometimes comedic lens.
Oh yeah.
There's a dark humor behind a lot of it.
Yeah, can we talk about real quick about just like the visuals, like some of the shot, the cinematography
Hmm.
period,
Hmm.
and just the stage direction of some of these shots are just masterful.
Stunning. Like
Stunning shots.
watching this like kind of on the tail end of the pandemic, I was just like starved for just something, you know?
Yeah. Mhm.
Like instead of like whatever trash was on Apple TV or whatever.
Mhm.
And this was just an explosion of just color. Like it's such a colorful movie in a way that I wasn't expecting.
The color that jumps to my mind is kind of like more it's not really super bright. I think of the opposite. I think of just like the drab, bluish tones of
Mhm.
that, like, theater performance room, I guess, that,
Yeah, the
like,
library.
yeah, the library and the horrifying, like, audience of fellow perverts, uh, watching her read this incredibly, like, graphic stuff is but that's kind of the vision I have of that's the color I would put on this movie, and then that color also comes back later in part 3
Mhm.
with the not even untimely demise. It's just the murdering of, her uncle and the count, in the basement with no ventilation or windows with what was it, mercury cigarettes? Like, crazy.
Mhm.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like to wrap up our plot description, the girls kind of get away with it at the end of the movie, and then I think Hideko sends a letter to her uncle, being like, "This is what happened, by the way," and he goes and kidnaps the count and holds him, basically tortures him to figure out what all has been happening this entire time. And
Yep.
then the count has like these mercury laced cigarettes that he asked for, and he kills them both with it. So it's very fitting. It's kind of Shakespearean in that way. I kind of love it.
Yeah, yeah, it's not, like, overly, violent or whatever, like, hyper violent. The
No,
although he does get all his fingers chopped off, and that is violent with a paper cutter, like, holy shit.
but
Uh,
even then, it's kind of like funny. They're just kind of like having a conversation the
mhm.
entire time,
Yeah,
and just like
it doesn't feel like horror movie, like, Hostel or anything like that when you cut people's fingers off. He's kinda taking it in stride, which is just like, "Hey, good for you, man."
yeah,
But
yeah.
he knows his goose is cooked, so that's why he's ripping mercury cigs like it ain't no thing, knowing that he's just gonna kill them both, which is pretty rad. Like you said, super Shakespearean, really cool.
Yeah, I think, like, I mean, this is kind of diving into the main course. I don't know if we wanna do a bit of a main course transition getting into there.
Oh, yeah.
Give it to me. So
Boom.
stupid.
It's so great.
Alright, now we're in the main course. I think this movie is just so much about building stuff up only
Yeah,
to knock it down again. Both in terms of, like, the insane plot that we just described, but also how each of the characters, how they're initially presented versus how, like, they actually are. Um, and so you get it with like the parts of the movie, how all of the plot that happens in the first movie is kind of like knocked down and disassembled in the second part.
yep,
And then that's continued again in the third part where you kind of complete the con there. I also think like the count is kind of way more interesting of a character than he has any right to be, because he seems kind of like the standard sleazebag in the first part where he just wants to like get his rocks off or whatever and marry this woman and commit her to an insane asylum, steal her money. And then in the second part, you get the idea of like he is this guy who came from nothing and he's doing this con, and he realizes first and foremost when he first meets Lady Hideko that he's not going to be able to like seduce her in that.
yeah,
And so he immediately meets her on another level and is like, okay, let's team up in kind of like a platonic, quote unquote, for now way,
yeah.
um, that gives you what you want and I get what I want. And then that kind of falls apart in the third part because he eventually does succumb and wants to just like have sex, and she's like, "No, fuck off." Um,
I'm going to, like, knock you out, and that was a cool, tense scene. I
yeah,
was like, "Take drink just take a drink. Take the drink. What are you doing?"
again,
And then
just fluids.
the quick pivot to, like, "I'm gonna take a sip," but, like, shotgun it to him, was nothing short of genius.
Yeah, but then I like where we end with him, where he again, like he's getting tortured in this basement, but he's kind of like he has this vibe of like you got to hand it to him, you know, they did it.
Yeah,
He's just like he's just having a conversation with the uncle, like we both lost this, like
yeah,
this is it, we're done.
yeah, I thought there was, talk about funny moment, like, some levity, when, like, the 2, I guess I don't know, thugs or whatever from her uncle's retinue
Yeah,
come to his to that hotel room or whatever, and they have the swords, and they're like just laughing at him like as he wakes up. He doesn't have his pants on, and he kind of just
yeah.
like looks around the room, and he's like, "Could you hand me those, please?" Like really off the wall, pretty funny. Um, and then only to cut it back where the girls go back to the house and Suki is like destroying everything in the library, and it's so cool,
That
so
is
powerful.
my other favorite scene, from the movie, and, like, another example of, like, setting something up to, like, literally knock it
Tear it
down,
down. I
towards the
love
end,
it.
because you set up this library as, like, this almost, like, indestructible, like, this is the evil uncle's home base, and he controls every inch of it, and this is where all of his valuables are. This is where, like, his actual heart lies, is in these, like, valuable porn books. This is his collection, and so like in order to set Hideko free, Suki realizes like she has to destroy all these things that are tethering her to this house, and it's so gratifying just to see her go absolutely ham
Mhm.
on this massive collection of books in every way possible, and then eventually see Hideko like join in on it,
Yeah, it's great.
as she kind of like gets the courage to put that strength in.
Yeah, you love to see those kinds of, like, heroic moments where the main character kinda gets to confront their past and then, yeah, destroy it so they can move on. Um Yeah, like tearing the pages and ripping them to shreds and moving the pieces of the floor where there's water underneath, and you get to soak all the books in there and just destroy it. But I think it's
House is insane.
House is insane, and, I don't like it, but I think it's clever that they try to, like, get you to sympathize with the uncle character a little bit when he's just like, "I'm just an old man who likes dirty stories," you know? Like,
Yeah,
poor me, but it's like, "No, dude, you are fucked up, man."
yeah, yeah. This is all about like people's crazy, weird approach to sex, and again, like using sex as a tool versus like experiencing sex with someone. Whew.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding, yeah. Whew. Ay, ay, ay.
What other notes did you have, Justin? What were you thinking going through this?
I didn't take any notes because I let the movie wash over me and into me,
You're just
uh,
fucking gross.
just going on vibes with this movie. Like, it's part of me of just like, "Man, that looks so." And the an argument that I read on Reddit was that, like, this it feels like it was directed by a man because it was, but, like, this is obviously the male gaze,
Hmm.
being filmed in this kind of way. It feels exploitive, it feels over the top, and it's like, no, that's the point. Like,
Yeah,
that's all they know or all, Lady Hideko knows is from, her upbringing, and it's kind of a commentary on that, so, like, we love that, really cool, but then, you just love, like, you wanna be them because you just wanna be devoured and loved by this other person at the same time. It's pretty cool.
it's super male gazy, and it like it does show that like the two main sex scenes in this movie are both with Hideko, and one of them is like with Suki, which we revisit several times, and it's like extremely over the top. But I like how they're kind of just laughing through how ridiculous it is at
Mhm.
certain points, which is there's a level of truth there. And then later on in the movie, she has this scene with the Count where he eventually I mean he's like ultimately trying to rape her, but like he has this thing he says where he's like, women have the most pleasure when it's being like
Oh,
forced on them or
taken by
something like
force,
that.
yeah.
And so
Ick.
it's really all about just like how these men just have no idea like what actual like sexual pleasure means and like where it comes from and like all
Yeah.
these like warped versions of this. And so it's about like Hideko kind of like making her way out of that with Suki.
Yeah.
Um
Which you love to see, it's great. Oh, the Count's final line of like, "Well, at least I'll die with, what is it? Like, with my cock in place," or something like that.
it's so weird.
So ridiculous. Some of the choice lines are a choice. But it's ultimately it ends on a triumph. They're just ringing in the new year on the boat
Ah,
in their magical room,
yeah.
with Chekhov's Benoit balls. You know, they
Yeah,
so
yeah,
silly.
they're using these bells as kind of like, insertion toys, in their relationships, which I think is part of one of the stories that she
Yeah.
reads earlier on,
Mhm.
so it's kinda harkening back to that. My main note there was, like, traditional roles kind of like of, like, men and women keep these 2 women imprisoned, but I like how, like, it's also how they get out eventually at the end because like uh the uncle informs the police to like look for these 2 women on the run, but Hideko is disguised as a man, and so that's what lets them escape to. I think it's they're going to Japan, right?
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
at the end.
Mhm.
It's kind of a cool like turning that on its head.
Yeah, love that. Love a little drag moment, love a dramatic escape, and then to celebrate with more just, gratuitous, sex on a boat.
Sex
Uh,
on a boat.
and then it ends there.
Yeah,
Like, no prologue, no epilogue, no, like, they lived happily ever after. It's like, nope, they're just banging on a boat, and they escaped, and the 2 bad guys are dead, and that's all you need.
yeah, it's kind of one of those movies where you don't expect a happy ending just because like so much crazy shit is happening.
Mhm.
But it's ultimately about these 2 characters just really taking hold of their life in a way that they haven't before,
Ta
and these men don't know how to deal with that.
Taking hold, HOLE apostrophe D,
I
taking
can't
hold.
I
I
can't say
can't.
anything in this episode that doesn't sound like a double entendre.
Yeah, well, this is the rare single entendre. You can say anything and it fits in this movie. Um, but no, like, this was a good
Fits.
it fits. Your cat just looked up.
Yeah.
So I got a good idea of, like, all right, so this is how high Joe is swinging with his batshit crazy, which, we love a twist and a twist on a twist and a double cross, triple cross, quadruple cross. We love asynchronous storytelling.
Uh-huh.
So I get it. Like, this is a solid entry into this batshit crazy series.
Do you wanna, I'll kind of go through the rest of my notes at the end here, but do you want to give a quick preview of what you're thinking for your batshit entry?
No, no, no. We'll do that at the end.
Do
Give
that at
me
the
give me
very
some of
end.
your notes and thoughts. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. My notes were that yes, we would have been screwed if we had watched the original file that we were trying to watch because the subtitles were not in different colors, and
Nope.
we would not have known really if they were speaking Korean or Japanese, other than being able to
Context
slightly
clues.
distinguish between one of the two. Yeah. Which is an important part of this movie
Mhm.
because things are relayed in Korean and things are relayed in Japanese, and they mean different meanings based on who's relaying them.
Yep.
Um, Let me see. Uh, it's about a con on cons. This movie's about a crush. This movie's about emotion getting in the way of plans. Um, I think I wrote this movie rocks like 6 times. Um,
Movie rocks. ROXXX. This movie rocks.
I like when they hold hands when they're having sex. That seemed nice.
It's sweet. And they hold hands in the boat, and she puts her head on her shoulder, and it's really sweet.
Apart from the traumatizing smut readings, I do want this library, unfortunately.
This
Um,
exact library or just the layout? Or,
no,
like,
the
okay,
layout, different
show.
books.
Different books.
I want the room. Uh,
Okay, that's better.
doesn't even need to have the crazy torture basement in it.
With the octopus just waiting.
Yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
octopus seemed happy.
He looked cramped, not happy.
Yeah, small
Is
tank.
that where he was getting his ink that he was just, like, licking the whole time?
Oh my god, you think so? I didn't even make that connection.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, that's where he gets his ink from."
He's gross. A lot of
He's gr lots
licking
of
in this movie. Lickings of various varieties.
mhm, licking gush. But I want to talk about real quick, and then we can close out. You mentioned the poster earlier on, and I have the poster up, and it's such a powerful poster,
I love it.
um, because it tells the picture. I mean, it
Yeah.
tells the story.
It's
Uh,
literally just like what their hands are doing is the story.
yeah, 100%. Just so much control, being telegraphed, the way that Suki's eyes are looking, them holding hands, but, like, the 2 men are keeping her down, like, that is a masterclass of a poster design.
It's so cool. Like all of the shots in this movie are just so cool and like intricately set up. And you could, I mean, you could analyze each frame of this movie the same way you analyze the movie as a whole, which I think is cool, and I think movies are cool.
I think movies are cool. Yeah. Uh,
um,
yeah,
all
it's
right,
great.
give me some final thoughts on the Handmaiden.
Final thoughts, super crazy, but not, to the effect that I thought it was gonna go. I thought it was gonna go crazy Lovecraftian, there's a monster in the basement, and it's gonna be let loose and all this kinda
Yeah,
stuff. But
yeah,
even still, like, it was a good, a fun, out of order narrative and, crazy sex, but, that's just par for the course. It was a fun movie. It was
it's a
a
fun
good choice.
movie. I think it. I mean, this isn't low hanging fruit. I think it really does build up to a lot of fun climaxes.
Hey, many, many, many
Truly,
climaxes.
truly, truly does.
Truly does.
Earned climaxes.
Mhm. You gotta talk her through it, sometimes. No, this is great. I enjoyed The Handmaiden.
Ah, fantastic. Okay, well, as we go through our batshit insane miniseries, Justin, how will you be topping The Handmaiden against
Well, we will be topping and bottoming The Handmaiden, and, we're gonna go back to, the '80s, to 1985, with Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I watched this movie so much as a kid. And I can't this is the only movie that I can think of that jumped into my brain when we were talking about a batshit crazy. Like, what's the most craziest movie you've ever seen and can think of? And to me, it's this one. There is so much just burned into my brain from watching this on repeat as a child. And I can't wait for you to be awash with so many horrifying visuals.
I I am kind of terrified. I don't know much about Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I know about Pee-wee who plays the uh the count or whatever on 30 Rock, who's like descendant of the Habsburgs, that actor.
Uh-huh. Paul
And
Rubin. Yep.
he's like falling apart.
Yep.
And I know there's maybe like a chair that has eyes. Is there an armchair
That
in Pee-wee's Big
that's
Adventure?
that's from the TV show.
So this is a
Uh,
spin-off of the TV show.
I don't know if it's a spin-off. I'm gonna do some research and see if there is, or if it's just like he had a TV show and then like he's doing a movie now. I don't know if they are related. But a lot of wacky stuff in Pee-wee's world. But this is a Tim Burton flick. Uh,
Oh, really?
and you will get lots of fun visual gags that are familiar in a Tim Burton movie, as well as a classic Danny Elfman score, which ultimately feels just completely wacky and tangential to our own reality, because that's
Mhm.
just what Tim Burton and Danny Elfman do. So that is my entry. That will be the next move that we take, um, and it'll be a crazy fun time.
Can't wait.
Can't
Alrighty.
wait. All right, y'all, go get your lips smacked, and
Yeah.
we'll catch you later.
I'm just gonna practice different sound effects.
All right.
Stop.